"Frank, don't write this story," the mayor said over the phone. "It won't be good for the town." The second call came from the sheriff. "Return those documents. The investigation is ongoing." The third was anonymous. "Drop it or else." Frank Morrison smiled. He'd been a foreign correspondent for 25 years, receiving threats from cartels, warlords, and dictators. Small-town corruption couldn't intimidate him. Welcome to Echo Stories. Before we begin this powerful story, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from. And if you believe stories like this need to be heard, hit that subscribe button to support our channel. Millbrook, Vermont, a small New England town with a population of 4,500. Main Street had old brick buildings, maple trees, small businesses, typical American small-town atmosphere. Frank Morrison, 62 years old, was editor-in-chief and the only full-time employee of the Millbrook Weekly. Small office, old printing press, decades-old furniture, local news, school events, obituaries, small-town journalism. Frank had been here for 15 years, calm, reliable, a man who didn't harm anyone. Every week he prepared the paper, covered local events, respected in the community but unremarkable. But nobody knew Frank's past. His resume only said journalist, various publications. He wouldn't give details. Retired writer, he would say about himself. In reality, Frank Morrison had been an international war correspondent for 25 years. Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Somalia, Sierra Leone. In the world's most dangerous places, writing the darkest stories. This morning routine had something different. A confidential envelope had come from the sheriff's office, by mistake, to his address. Frank opened the envelope. Federal court documents, autopsy report, classified sections. It was related to Judge Robert Kenmore's death. Judge Kenmore had died last week from a heart attack. 68 years old, healthy, active. Frank had written his obituary, standard format, respectful tone. But there were inconsistencies in the autopsy report. Time of death, blood toxicology, witness statements. Frank's trained eye noticed the details. 25 years of investigative experience automatically activated. Pattern recognition, document analysis, source verification. This wasn't a natural death. Frank spread the documents in his office. He took notes, created a timeline. He began to reconstruct the judge's final days. Kenmore was a federal judge, handling high-profile cases, drug trafficking, money laundering, organized crime. He could have had powerful enemies. Frank began research, phone calls, public records, background checks. War correspondent reflexes returned. The phone rang in the afternoon. It was Mayor Thomas Bradley. "Frank, good afternoon. I heard you're looking into Judge Kenmore's death. Just fact-checking for the obituary follow-up," Frank replied carefully. "Well, I think we should let sleeping dogs lie. Judge had health problems. Family wants privacy." Frank's instincts sharpened. "I wasn't aware of any health problems. Sometimes families know things that aren't public. It's better to respect their wishes." "Of course, Mayor, thanks for calling." The call ended. Frank became suspicious. The mayor rarely called directly, and the family privacy excuse was weak. The second call came from Sheriff Mike Crawford. "Frank, I understand you received some documents by mistake." "Which documents?" Frank played innocent. "Federal court materials. They need to be returned immediately. Ongoing investigation." "What kind of investigation?" "Can't discuss details. Just return the documents, please." Frank hesitated. "I'll drop them off tomorrow. Today would be better." Frank agreed, but made a mental note. This pressure was unusual. In the evening, a third call came. Number blocked. "Mr. Morrison." "Speaking." "You should drop whatever you're working on for your own good." "Who is this?" "Someone who knows what's best for you. Stop digging." The line went dead. Frank smiled. 25 years of death threats from much scarier people. Cartel bosses in Mexico, warlords in Somalia, government officials in corrupt regimes, anonymous local threats. Amateur hour. Frank made a decision. He would pursue this story. Frank went to his home office. Old boxes stored files, photo albums, war correspondent memories. On the awards wall, Pulitzer nomination, overseas press club recognition, photos with heads of state, remnants from a different life. Frank opened his laptop, established a secure connection. Techniques learned over 25 years, encrypted communication, secure sources, document verification. He did deeper research on Judge Kenmore's background, recent cases, rulings, threats. A pattern emerged. In the last 6 months, Kenmore had handled high-profile drug cases, major convictions, significant sentences. Someone powerful could have had motive. Frank checked his contact list. Old sources, federal agencies, investigative networks, unused in retirement but still active connections. Text message sent, need favor. Off-record inquiry, Judge, Death, Vermont, suspicious. Response 20 minutes later, be careful, big players involved. The next morning, Frank began serious investigation. War correspondent mode fully activated. Phone records, financial transactions, travel patterns. He traced the judge's activities in recent months. Interesting pattern discovered. Kenmore had recently held an unusual number of private meetings. Prosecutors, federal agents, witnesses, high-level coordination. Frank called one of his sources, DEA contact, still active. Judge Kenmore was working on something big, the source whispered. Multi-agency operation. Can't say more. Was he threatened? Can't confirm, but he requested security detail twice last month. Puzzle pieces connecting. The judge wasn't a random target. He was specifically eliminated. Frank started the documentation process, evidence collection, witness interviews, timeline verification, professional journalism standards. Sheriff Crawford came to the office personally. Frank, you missed our appointment. Documents? Still reviewing them. Professional obligation to verify information. This isn't investigative reporting, Frank. It's local news. Every story deserves accuracy, Frank replied calmly. Crawford was irritated. You're not Bob Woodward. This is Millbrook, Vermont. Frank maintained eye contact. Truth doesn't change based on location. Return the documents today or we'll have problems. After Crawford left, Frank photocopied everything. Always backup materials. First rule of investigative journalism. In the evening, a second anonymous call. You were warned. Stop now. Or what? Frank challenged. You have a nice, quiet life here. Would hate to see it disrupted. Frank laughed. I've been shot at by Taliban. Your threat needs work. Frank's persistence paid off. Through federal contacts, he obtained additional information. Judge Kenmore wasn't just handling drug cases. He was coordinating a multi-state investigation into a money laundering operation. Major political figures were involved. The corruption network extended from drug cartels to local politicians to federal contracts. Millions of dollars, dozens of officials. Kenmore's death wasn't random. It was an assassination to protect the conspiracy. Frank had seen this pattern before, in Syria, Nigeria, Colombia. When truth threatens power, messengers get eliminated. But Frank wasn't intimidated. Quite the opposite. Energized. This was real journalism again, not bake sale reports. Frank dug deeper into local connections. Mayor Bradley, Sheriff Crawford, several council members, all had recently acquired expensive properties, luxury cars. Financial records showed unexplained income, shell company transactions, offshore accounts, classic money laundering indicators. Frank's investigative skills were fully engaged. Document photography, secure storage, redundant backups, professional evidence handling, phone tapped? Frank assumed yes. Emails monitored? Probably. Physical surveillance? Definitely. Frank used old tricks, coded messages, secure drops, alternative communication. Skills learned in war zones, now applied to Vermont. The local coffee shop became command center. Public space, multiple exits, community witnesses, safe meeting location. Frank's reputation as a serious journalist attracted sources, anonymous tips, document drops, whispered conversations. Court clerk. Judge was scared last month, asked about security procedures. Bank employee. Unusual cash deposits, large amounts, same people. Federal agent off record. We were building case. Judge's death stopped everything. Pattern confirmed. Organized conspiracy, federal investigation, targeted elimination. Frank had enough for a major expose. But publishing in a small local paper would be suicide, literally and professionally. Frank reached out to former colleagues, major newspapers, investigative teams, federal crime reporters. Frank Morrison? Thought you retired to Vermont? A colleague was surprised. I did, but the story found me. What kind of story? Federal judge assassination, political corruption, money laundering, multi-state operation. Jesus, Frank, you sure? 25 years sure. Send what you have, secure channels. Frank transmitted evidence to multiple outlets. Insurance policy against local retaliation. Mayor Bradley visited the newspaper office personally. Frank, we need to talk. About what? Community stability, economic development, tourism, and this speculation about Judge Kenmore hurts our reputation, scares investors. Frank studied Bradley. What speculation? You know what I mean. Sometimes journalists get carried away. Sometimes mayors get nervous when truth surfaces. Bradley's tone hardened. This conversation is friendly advice. Next one might not be. After Bradley left, Frank noticed a surveillance car outside. Professional observation, not local amateur hour. That evening, Frank's house was visited. 3 men, professional appearance, federal credentials. Mr. Morrison, we're here about your recent activities. Which activities? You've obtained classified materials, national security issue. Frank examined credentials carefully. These documents were mailed to me by mistake. Regardless, they must be returned. No copies, no notes. And if I refuse, then we discuss federal obstruction charges. Frank smiled. Gentlemen, I've been threatened by much scarier people than you. Try harder. After they left, Frank immediately activated emergency protocol. All evidence distributed to multiple sources, secure locations, trusted colleagues. 3 days later, the Washington Post published a front-page expose. Federal judge's death linked to multi-state corruption investigation. Frank's byline wasn't on the story, but his research formed the foundation. Professional courtesy among journalists. Protect the source. National media descended on Millbrook. FBI investigation reopened, grand jury convened, Mayor Bradley arrested, Sheriff Crawford suspended, 12 officials indicted. Frank's small-town life ended, but mission accomplished. Frank's role gradually became public. Retired war correspondent uncovers major conspiracy. Former colleagues praised him, still the best investigative journalist alive. Local reaction was mixed, some grateful for truth, others angry about disruption. Frank was philosophical. Truth doesn't care about convenience. The Pulitzer Committee contacted him. Interested in submitting this work? Frank declined, did it for justice, not awards. After the investigation concluded, Frank faced a choice: return to international journalism or stay in Millbrook. The decision was easy. The small town needed honest journalism, even if uncomfortable. Frank continued publishing the Millbrook Weekly, but content changed. Deeper reporting, investigative pieces, accountability journalism. Local officials were now careful around him, community more engaged, democracy working better. Frank's masthead tagline, "Truth serves community better than comfort." A young journalism student visited. How did you know to investigate? Experience teaches pattern recognition. When everyone tells you to stop looking, start looking harder. Weren't you scared? Scared? Number concerned about evidence preservation? Yes. What's the difference? Fear stops you. Caution makes you careful. The student was inspired. Can I learn from you? Frank smiled. Truth needs new guardians every generation. 2 years later, Frank still edited the Millbrook Weekly. But circulation increased, respect elevated, impact multiplied, small-town journalism with international standards, local accountability with professional rigor. Frank's war correspondent experience applied to community service. Different battlefield, same mission, truth. Young reporters sought his mentorship. How do you stay motivated? Frank's answer: truth doesn't retire, neither do its servants. Stories mattered, whether from Syria or Vermont. Corruption threatened democracy everywhere. Journalism was democracy's immune system. Frank continued fighting, one story at a time, and so, in a small Vermont town, it was once again proven how deceiving appearances can be. A man seen as a local newspaper editor was actually a world-experienced investigative journalist. But more importantly, that experienced journalist was now serving in a different way. Real journalists are like this. They transition from war zones to small towns, but the mission doesn't change. They defend truth, hold power accountable, protect democracy. If this story meant something to you, share your thoughts in the comments. If you believe stories like this should continue to be told, support Echo Stories by subscribing. See you in the next video. And remember, that quiet editor at your local newspaper might be a truth warrior. Everyone has a story, and that story deserves to come to light.